Well, thank you very much, everyone. This is the Q&A for Dr. Jerome Teelucksingh from Trinidad and Tobago. Jerome started the International Men's Day events on November 19. A lot of you hopefully have just seen the video. And now we have a Q&A with Dr. Teelucksingh. Although you're happy to be called Jerome, is that right?
Correct. That's fine with me, Robert. That's fine.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Please let me call you Jerome, because I will have no chance on saying your surname.
Okay, Natalie.
So we've got quite a good audience coming in already. But if anybody has any questions, this is the time to make them. Otherwise, we'll chat a little bit about it. Yes, you were saying before about we were talking just briefly before we began actually about masculinity. And how it's certainly at the moment, I mean, we've got terms like toxic masculinity that are coming up, and really a lot of different people telling men which way to turn, which way to go. A lot of people are offering opinions on what men should do. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm glad you brought up that, because that label toxic masculinity is sometimes used as a sort of whip to keep men in place. And often we will hear about men not showing emotion and they want men to cry. But crying is not the only emotion. I experience disappointment, anger, hate. And it's only natural as a human being that I express these diverse emotions that we all have. But for you to say that I cannot display anger, we'll need this bottled up. And it creates mental health issues when you cannot freely display your emotions, So I think we have to be careful around the world that toxic masculinity does not become a cliche. It has become overused, and sometimes we don't know the meaning of it again,
Absolutely. It's actually quite a poorly defined concept anyway. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So I think we need, to understand, what is toxic masculinity. And what I've been telling a few people in a humorous way is that why we don't hear about toxic femininity. We hear a lot about one side, but we don't hear about the other side, So I think we also have to remember that it's not just masculinity is toxic in the world,
Yeah.
So we have it. I'll go on, Natalie.
I was just going to say, because we do have a question here, but before we hit Douglas's question, I just wanted to say, as a cis straight female, yeah, I think I got that right. In a partner, I want him to be masculine. I don't want him to be feminine. I want him to have masculine qualities. If I wanted to control that masculinity, and I'm not saying this as an insult, I might as well be a lesbian. Like, it just doesn't make sense how cisgendered females can pass judgment and say it's down to toxic masculinity. So to me, it's like insulting all masculinity, because just to say the word toxic in front of it doesn't just narrow it down to 1%. So if they're trying to control what masculinity is, you're basically trying to make them feminine, and what's the use? You might as, it just doesn't make sense in my brain anyway.
So we've got a question from Douglas Wallace. Jerome, do you have any thoughts on how I might get the UN to recognise International Men's Day?
That's a very good question, Douglas. And I have been trying. I've been asking my country, and what I've realised is that your country has an ambassador. Usually, a country would have an ambassador to the United Nations, and that ambassador will have to put forward that motion in New York when the United Nations meet in September. My country, Trinidad and Tobago, has not shown any interest in getting our ambassador to put forward in motion, so that once a motion is put forward, countries would vote for it. And I think it is time that we have it on the United Nations calendar, because you would be surprised how many strange days they have. They have a day for animals and insects and nothing for men, So it will be good, if Douglas, you encourage the ambassador for your country and maybe anybody listening to try to get your government to let your UN ambassador put forward the motion, and I'm willing to support it in any way. So that's an excellent question.
Wonderful. And I just wanted to add, there are actually, I think, 8 days for women and girls, or some subsets of women and girls in the United Nations. Now, Douglas and Jerome, I'm actually in contact with a Haitian diplomat who's stationed in Geneva, and he actually published an article on A Voice for Men a couple of years ago. He actually got United Nations, one of the organs of the United Nations, to actually mention boys' issues, which was probably a first. But Douglas and Jerome, I'm happy to put either or both of you in touch with him, actually, if that's something maybe we could coordinate there and maybe get some action on that.
You do realise that on the same day of International Men's Day, the UN does recognise International Toilet Day.
Yeah, World Toilet Day, exactly. That's right. Yeah, for those who don't know, it's World Toilet Day. That's right.
No, it seems like I insult that.
Yeah, they're not idolizing the toilet. That it's more to do with sanitation and how third world countries don't have toilets.
Yeah.
It's saying that just to put out it's International World Toilet Day, the image that comes into your head is a toilet, not what it represents. It
does seem to be some sort of implied insult, as you say, Jerome. Some people have suggested maybe we should embrace it, because I mean, most of those toilets were pretty much all dug by men, and it does bring about sanitation.
And many of the people who clean the toilets, the septics, are men. Many of the toilet cleaners,
Yes, exactly.
Sanitation workers.
And plumbers, I could not be a plumber for the life of me. I'd vomit.
And you mentioned before about expressing emotions. I think that's a really good point. I mean, we hear a lot about men not expressing their emotions. Do you have any thoughts on that sort of thing, on whether men are really being constrained, or whether perhaps they are expressing their emotions and nobody's listening? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think and I've been speaking with men from different cultures and different countries, and it's very unfortunate that sometimes when men speak, and of course women, we are misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
I might say something, and Robert, you might misinterpret it as racist. Natalie might say the same statement and say it is sexist. Another man might hear it and say, this is something that is atrocious and illegal, So we have been using words and it's being misinterpreted, and this has created a sort of fear in men to express themselves properly, to display emotions, Sometimes men, they feel guilty. They have this guilt, and sometimes men are even accused of being privileged, so that we say things and say that other people say, but you're a man, you're privileged, or you're from the upper class. So I think that is the world we live in. We live in a world where it has become very politicized, and we have not just politicized, but we have the feminists there who are picking everything and checking every word, making sure we dot our I's. So I think that too, the language that we are using and the emotions have created men who are confused, men who might want to keep their emotions and feelings and thoughts suppressed.
Absolutely. Yes, it's a really good point you make about the growing partisanship in the world, actually, and it is making everything much, much more complicated, I think. We're seeing a growing polarization. And unfortunately, we end up seeing ideas like International Men's Day getting pulled into that as well, where you end up with one side of the aisle sort of advocating it a bit, and the other side of the aisle naturally opposing it, I think, just by virtue of the fact that partisanship.
It is, and it is very unfortunate. Sometimes in countries we see politics dividing the men, we see men on different political sides. We see men of different ideologies, those who might be Marxists or communists, on one side, those who are capitalists, so we have all these various, divisions pulling apart the men's movement right now.
Absolutely. So Douglas is just, sorry, Natalie, do you want to go on?
I was just going to tail end of that, where I think when it comes, we're now in a world because of political correctness, we don't know what to say. And I've mentioned this before, and it was on an English soap opera where a taxi driver said, "It's typical of you folk," and he was talking to an Indian girl, and the Indian girl took it as racist, and he meant it as her generation just don't care. But she took it as a racist slur. So it's gotten to the point, I think, in our society as a whole, where we just don't know what to say because it's twisted so much. I can say something to Rob and he would laugh at it, and Jerome, you could take it as a racist comment, where it wasn't a racist comment, or vice versa. As you said earlier, I could take it as sexist and Rob could take it as racist. We're so quick and easy to judge the words coming out of somebody's mouth without understanding what they are really saying. And it's not us that are saying it wrong, it's people are interpreting it wrong because of preconditions. Like, I could say it's sexist, or I can say it's ageist, or I'm a big girl, so I could say, they're talking about that because I'm fat, because of a preconceived notion rather than what the person is actually saying.
Well, we're coming from different cultural backgrounds, and I think that's certainly, and that is something that that we see, particularly these days with people in constant connection with people around the world. And we do have to sort of realise people have different cultural backgrounds, and words can mean different things. So yes, Jerome. We were talking before about a bit more about emotions. We see a lot of things like men can't cry and so forth. It's interesting. I mean, I don't talk much from my personal experience, but from my personal experience, I have no problem crying. I don't do it very often, but because I don't feel the need. But I actually have no objection to doing it, and I have done it. And it's been interesting actually to sort of think about the reactions that I've got from people as a result. And a lot of people respond quite negatively actually to me crying because I'm male, I think. Which I found really interesting. A lot of women particularly feel very uncomfortable. I don't know if you had any thoughts along those lines.
Crying is seen as a sign of weakness, as many people know. And what is very unfortunate, it is also seen as a feminine trait. Just as, sometimes we wrongly conceive that when you hear the term nurse, you think female, but we have male nurses. So sometimes various occupations we believe is feminine. Sometimes, even the way you walk, you might say that a way a lady walks, so that we have tended to, unfortunately, classify certain words, emotions, professions as masculine and feminine. We have these two bottles, that we just fill, these two jars. And it's very unfortunate, that even with emotions, and I have seen big men adults who didn't cry at the parent's funeral or a funeral of a sibling for the simple reason of that.
Yeah.
That they didn't want to feel embarrassed, they didn't want people to say, well, you're weak or you're soft,
Yeah. Which is the time that actually they should be, if they want to, they should certainly be able to. So Douglas Wallace has just a comment actually. You and I both work in the international sphere, but at two different levels. Do you have wider connections outside of International Men's Day?
I certainly do, Douglas. I have a network with Caribbean persons, various Caribbean groups in England, Europe, and North America. I am also involved in trade unions in the Caribbean. I deal with the development of trade unionism. So I have a wider connection, and I have been promoting other initiatives as Worthy of the Boy Child, so that it is something that, and I put in the Facebook page here, it is something that, I would be willing to promote and work with you, Douglas, and Robert and Natalie in any way, or anybody in particular, to get it on the UN table, so I am open, and I have some good connections too.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. Yes, you just posted the link there to Lord Dave the Boy Child. Excellent. Yes. In fact, I've been in contact with a lady in Africa, Rosemary Mathroni, I think is hopefully I'm pronouncing her name correctly. But yeah, she's rerunning.
Yeah.
Do you know Rosemary? Sorry?
She's a very nice lady. Very nice, Rosemary. Very
that's great.
Lady.
That's great. I first met her on Facebook, actually. We've been keeping in touch. So that's great. Excellent. Oh, wow. Small world.
And she has been promoting not just International Men's Day, but Worthy of the Boy Child. So
yes, that's right.
With the boy child.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that particularly seems to be her focus, actually, in Africa at the moment. She actually just got an award, actually. So.
A volunteer award, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
There's one thing I want to mention, and I think it will be good for us to discuss, is that we often tend to hear that men don't take care of their health. I know we bring it up for in November last month, and that is also a false narrative. There are elements that are false in that, and I'll tell you why. I've spoken to men who cannot afford medical procedures. And that is why sometimes they do not go by the doctor, because their salaries are small, they're unemployed, they're unemployed. That money is used to buy bread, for food, to pay bills. And sometimes they sacrifice their health for their family. And I have also known men who do not trust the hospitals and the medical treatment in their countries. Some men have died on the operating tables, and that have created a fear. I have two friends who need a double bypass heart surgery, but because of the poor medical conditions in my country, and because of COVID, they are afraid to go for that heart surgery. So I think we need to bear that in mind. This is one of the narratives I've been trying to change. We cannot just say, well, men don't like to take care of their health. Men don't care about their health. There are reasons, and one of the major reasons is poor health service, and the other is that they cannot often afford these medical procedures.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And it's very easy for people like Natalie and myself living in countries with a socialised medical system, where it's all paid through taxes, to forget that that's actually not the case everywhere, and that some people, and particularly men, will not be able to do that. And I wonder too if men might not deliberately divert that money towards their wife and their children if they need medical care, and let their own health go, perhaps, in order to help their families.
I also think
some men have made. Yeah, go ahead, Natalie.
Sorry, I was also going to say, I think it's also, especially, Rob, in our culture, like, I'll say especially Australia, because we've got the precondition in our heads, like, you're a man, you've got to be tough, rub some dirt on it and get over it. Like, it does. You can have a broken leg, and it's preconditioned in the guy's head that they've just got to keep on going.
Well, that's stoicism, yeah. And I've always said stoicism is a double-edged sword for men. It can cause men problems, but it can also lead you to sort of keep going when you really need to as well. And I've often said sometimes it can lead men to greatness as well. So I think stoicism can be a bit of a double-edged sword. It can certainly harm men, though. Yeah,
it certainly could do that. And I think the media has an important role to play. There has to be a collaboration between the media, governments, men's groups, NGOs, to try to correct this, to rectify it.
Absolutely. Douglas has just mentioned that his speech is on the United Nations, actually, and it'll be on in ICMI in a few hours, about 6 hours, I believe.
Oh, very good, very good.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that one, actually, Douglas. I am. So we've got a couple of questions that have come up.
Sure.
From Carl, I have observed males have been taught to regulate most of their emotions, and females have been taught to express most of their emotions. What are your thoughts on how we can encourage males and females to develop a healthy balance between emotional expression and regulation?
That is a interesting question and a good question too, eh? And I think it is a question where we have to start from the kindergarten, the nursery level, the preschool level, to try to develop that healthy balance, because it's very difficult to have or teach, to re-socialize, to reprogram men and women to develop that healthy balance. But it's a very important question if we have to create harmony and peace in the world, if we have to create greater tolerance in the world. That, I think, what Carl is talking about is one of the pathways to that regulation, to create that healthy balance. So that is extremely important, and is one of the solutions, to many of the problems we have, that balance.
I know girls that can plan on the waterworks like that to get something they want. Like they'll just start tearing up. Like, and real tears. It's not crocodile tears, it's not fake. They will literally start welling up just to get something they want.
Yeah, it's interesting. This comes back to the concept of what you're talking about there, Jerome, concept of toxic masculinity. Feminists often claim they're trying to do these things for men, but well, colour me suspect with that. I think that a lot of it comes down to, it seems to be a form of manipulation. But the term, I've said the term toxic masculinity is toxic. I think if they really cared about men and men's well-being, they wouldn't use a term like that. That's my view.
Yeah, I agree with you. Certainly.
So Douglas has another question. Is male genital mutilation connected with men's resistance to a health system?
It's a good question, because there are men's groups that believe that circumcision it takes away the freedom of choice. The baby, it is done usually by the babies, and they believe that it's harming the baby. It's taken away from the man. Some people even believe it takes away from his sexual pleasure. And of course, we have the other argument that it's for health reasons. That we have this, but it could be, Douglas, that it could be a resistance to the health system. I have known men who had botched circumcisions, and that created problems in their childhood, right, in urinating, and sexual dysfunction later on. So that could be a problem, and it is done by somebody who is faulty. But there are debates, just as we have right now in 2021 and last year, those who are against vaccines and the anti-vaxxers, those who are against the vaccine. So we have both sides of the debate, but it is something that we have to discuss. We have to find out, where do men's groups stand on it? Where do men stand on it? Is it really a form of mutilation? Does it take away the freedom of choice? And does it harm the man later on?
So to be clear, myself, Mike Buchanan, my organisation, the Australian Men's Rights Association, Mike's organisation, Justice for Men and Boys, he's going to change the name soon though, but that's the current name, and A Voice for Men, we're all strictly anti-circumcision. We basically, well, a number of arguments. It's obviously off topic for this video, but we've got obviously fundamentally the human rights argument, but there are various other arguments, and it is something that is talked about in pretty much in every ICMI, and in this ICMI we have Brother K, who's a well-known intactivist who's done a presentation. Basically, so that's the position that we have. But I was going to say, we've had some attendees who are vehemently well, I wouldn't say pro circumcision, but they believe that it should be the parent's choice. And we've even had a couple of guests who have expressed that opinion. So it's interesting. At this conference, there has been perhaps you could even say a little bit of a heated debate at times.
And I know among the women too, it's a very big topic in places like Africa.
Absolutely. With FGM, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Among the females.
Right. Exactly, that's right, yeah. And to be clear, we oppose all gender mutilation, so MGM, FGM, and so forth. I personally oppose gender reassignment of children, but not adults. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so it has been a heated and interesting topic, and we have a number of open sessions actually. I said it's off topic for this Q&A, but we do have a number of open sessions, and if anyone wants to talk about MGM and the pros and cons, that's the topic of the discussion we're happy to have in the open.
And I think I'll have nothing to say because I checked this morning. I don't have a ding-a-ling, so I don't know what it's like.
I'm glad you clarified that. Good.
Yeah. It'd be like me saying, I need your guys' opinion on me cutting off my breast to prevent breast cancer or something stupid. You guys don't have the chest I've got. Oh God, I hope you don't have the chest I've got. But yeah, it's something because I don't have one. I have never experienced having one attached to me. That I cannot pass judgment, so I'll let everybody else discuss, and I'll just sit back here going,
So Douglas, no, go on. Douglas just made a comment. It's good to have the differences of opinion out in the open, exactly, and that's something that's really increasingly missing from modern discourse. And we're very much in favour of open discourse, discussion. Feminists try to shut us down all the time. We never try to shut feminists down. In fact, every ICMI, I can't say specifically for this one, but I can say definitely for every previous ICMI, we've had feminists attend, and they're welcome to do so. As long as they're respectful and don't try to shut down our event, they're welcome to attend, ask questions, even probing and difficult questions, that's no problem. Open discourse is key. Yeah, anyway, sorry, go on.
I think what you said there, Robert, is so important because we need to have, and what Douglas said, a discussion. We need to have a healthy discussion and differences in opinion. We are not robots. We are made up differently. We think differently, and we need to appreciate that diversity because it is that healthy discussion that makes us progress and it makes us evolve. You know. So I think we need to do it. And that I think is the problem, that we see divisions within the men's movement, but it could be healthy divisions. We could be on the same path, but we might be different in ideas or goals. So I think it is good that that you all are having this conference, and I'm really glad that you're having this healthy debate discussion.
Yeah, it's no, thank you very much, and that's right. Within the men's rights movement, we're quite happy to have, and the broader, men's issues community and so forth. We're quite happy to have open discussions, and not everybody will agree on every topic. And you know what? That's okay. It's I have friends that I disagree with on some perhaps even fundamental points, but it doesn't. We're still friends. That's okay.
Correct.
Seems to be something missing from modern discourse. So I think there was Douglas, I think it was Douglas. Yeah, Douglas made a point. Yeah, and I agree with Douglas's point actually. Douglas has said women can have opinions. They can speak from experience on the sexual side. That's true on the issue of male circumcision. So that's actually a really good point. I'd even further suggest that, well, I'll be clear on this. My position is anybody may have an opinion on any subject. So I may have an opinion on abortion. Natalie may have an opinion on circumcision, male genital mutilation. She's perfectly entitled to that opinion, etc. So, and Douglas actually does make a good point, though, that there is the sexual side of things with male genital mutilation, and a lot of women do report that that circumcision has problems causes problems with a sexual partner, causes problems for them. That's actually something that we do see reports of.
And Robert, those are the issues that we need statistics. The governments, and social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, we need statistics. We need to find out what is happening in these counseling sessions. What is happening? Why did a divorce occur? Why did a separation occur? Was it because of this issue? I think that is what is missing, in that we tend to make generalizations, but we need hardcore statistics, to find out, is it really harmful? Is it useful? What is the long-term effect of this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, we do see data being tainted, unfortunately, because there's so much feminist infection in certain areas of academia that we do see problems like that. So there's a major study in New Zealand called the Dunedin Longitudinal Study, and they've studied people a little bit younger than me. They're a group of babies born about 42 years ago, I think it is. They've been studying them every 5 years in New Zealand and Dunedin, New Zealand. And there's a rumour, I can't confirm it, that it's been showing that intimate partner violence is not gendered. That's what the Dunedin study's been showing. There's a rumour that they're going to drop questions related to domestic violence from the study because it wasn't producing the right results. Can't confirm.
I'm not surprised.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. No, I'm not surprised because a lot of times, those with the money control the way in which data is produced, and what the public finds out, and those with the influence, not just money, maybe politicians too might be in the game, So we have to be very careful and mindful of those who are providing the data,
Quite right. How do you feel? Oh, I think we do have another question coming up. I'll just ask one quick question before we go to that one. How do you feel that things are progressing? You started International Men's Day in 1999 on the current date. As we know, it had run previously, but it petered out. You grabbed it, ran with it, and on 1999, it's been going great guns ever since. How do you feel that is it sort of expanding around the world? Do you think there's more activity now than there was a few years ago, or what are your thoughts?
I have been seeing positive progress, gradual progress. I believe last month we had about 92 countries celebrating International Men's Day. And what is interesting is that every year I hear new groups, new governments, new individuals coming forward and saying they want to help. They had a celebration, had an observance. Last year and this year, because of the pandemic, the majority of observances were online, but the fact was that they had something. Some people even had on their mask and they took to the streets. They defied the government orders and sanctions and they took to the streets. They're so enthusiastic about the Men's Day. They so look forward to that day in November. That sometimes I feel they're more excited than me, and they really want to make sure this Men's Day is kept alive and that it blossoms. So I'm really thankful. But I also want to mention something. I want to say that it's very unfortunate that not just those who celebrate Men's Day, but other events, men do not get funding. Men's groups are desperate. I have known men who are taking out personal expenses to have award ceremonies, to recognize men, to pay for venues, to put out ads in the media. And I also, which might be controversial, there are also talented, gifted men who would demand large amounts of money to speak.
Yes.
And I think we need to remember that if we have that gift, we have to share that knowledge and help others and empower others. There is no need to charge an exorbitant fee. Sometimes these CEOs and these politicians charge thousands of dollars to speak. And I think we have to bear that in mind, that we within the men's movement, if we have an idea, we have a concept, we have a gift and a talent, we need to freely share this because we might be helping hundreds and thousands of persons.
Absolutely agree. I actually personally have a background in the open source movement, which is very much is a culture of sharing and distributing, and that carries over to knowledge too. So yeah, that's absolutely the position I hold as well. And I think that when you share knowledge, we're all richer. Yeah.
Because sometimes people would ask me to speak and they would ask me, what is my fee? How much I would charge? And I would tell them, I'm doing this for the love of it. I'm doing it because, I was fortunate and I want to help somebody out there. And I'm just not reaching out to you all, but I'm also dealing with people who are mentally and emotionally challenged, those with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism. I'm even reaching out to prisoners. I've been writing prisoners, encouraging them to have observances and to change their ways. So Men's Day has evolved, into something, much bigger.
Absolutely. And I think we're definitely seeing a lot more interest in it and a lot more reporting on it. I'd say even within the last 5 years, perhaps even than before, it seems to have really picked up. So Douglas does have a question here. What is your answer to those who say we don't need a Men's Day because every day is Men's Day?
I have been getting that question a lot from journalists. Almost every year, as a rule, some journalists would ask me either that question or about patriarchy.
Yeah.
So it comes either that question or patriarchy or
Yeah.
both questions.
Yeah.
And you know, it comes back to the feeling from people that men are a privileged group,
Yeah.
that men are somehow in a special class and category, and we are immune to the world's problems and we control the world, you know. So it's very unfortunate that I have to now defend men's day, and I have to go into statistics to talk about men who are in prisons, men who are unemployed, men who are killed in wars, and I have to go through the whole long history, you know. So it's a question that I feel it is shallow. I don't like to use the word because it has a lot of weight in it too, but it seems like a shallow question to say every day is men's day, you know. It doesn't take into consideration, you know, the men who are out there putting their lives at risk, you know, and the men who are never honored and appreciated, you know. So, you know, these things, you know, I wait for the question. I wait for the question every year, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't help but laugh a little bit because it's just to me it strikes just such a ridiculous thing to say. But yeah, we've all heard it. So I'm not surprised the journalists approached you with that straight away. Go on.
Yeah, Rob, I know says it's like a cricket game, Rob, but the wicket keeper is waiting for the ball. He knows the batsman can't hit that fast ball, the fast ball, and he's just waiting for the ball, you know.
No, it's coming. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we use a term, apex fallacy, to sort of refer to that, where people look up at the top of society and see a bunch of men and assume that men must be going okay, and forget that there's this entire underclass of men who are having problems.
Yeah. Because if you look at a simple topic like suicides or depression,
yeah,
you would see that men are at the top, you know, at the top of the suicide statistics, you know, and
that's right.
It's very unfortunate, yeah.
And I think from memory, certainly in Western countries, the ratio of men to women, I believe, has increased since the early 20th century. So for every woman who takes her life, the number of men who takes his life is now greater than it was 100 or so years ago, which I think really speaks to the nature of society.
Yeah, and it shows a sort of regression to within the human civilization.
It does, absolutely. So we'll be finishing up shortly. Do we have any final questions for Jerome? Last chance. All right. I think we're probably good. Thank you very much, Jerome, for coming along today and doing the Q&A. We talked about IMD, but we ended up talking about a bunch of other subjects as well. And I think we have some great discussions at ICMI. So thank you very much. This has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you again. It is quite late for you. We really appreciate you accommodating us there. And we'll keep in touch, and we'll let's coordinate with Douglas and others, and we'll see if we can get various people at the UN talking to each other and see what we can work out.
It certainly was an honor being here, and I want to thank you all for having me here and for the questions. It's been a very enlightening evening.
Thank you very much. We're just seeing we might. We've got one last question from Carl before we go. Okay, if that's all right. Sure. How do you celebrate International Men's Day? Is the question.
That is a nice question, Carl, because I have been all over the place. You know, I would be in a webinar, a podcast, an interview, radio interview, television interview. But I think what I like best is to speak to the younger generation. If a library invites me, a primary school, I'm speaking to school children, I think I feel good knowing I'm passing on the message to the younger generation.
Yep.
You know, I think that touches me a lot. And what touches me a lot is when I am speaking to people who might be less fortunate than us. I might be speaking to people in an old age home, a home for the elderly. I might be speaking to some prisoners. You know, those are the people. Sometimes, you know, we preach to the converted. We preach to those who already know the message. So I really enjoy, speaking to those groups, Carl. So I don't really have a fixed format. I'm all over the place, different time zones. Sometimes I do pre-recorded messages, so on that day people would be able to hear what I have to say. But that's how I spend it, and it's the birthday of my dad. So I put aside about 2 hours to go and visit him, because he suddenly feels that he has lost me now to all these groups.
Right.
So
Yes.
I go and spend some time with him. Yeah.
Very cool. And that's a lovely point to finish on. Thank you so much, Jerome. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.
Take care, Robert. Take care now.